In 1938, 19-year-old Fred Francis set up a tool-making business from a lock-up in Mill Hill. After the war, Fred saw an opportunity to turn his attention to toy production. His first toy was the Mini-Type typewriter. Fred's company Minimodels was born. Fred's next toy was the traffic car, a tin-plate clockwork model which reversed when an obstacle was detected. In 1952, a range of tin-plate clockwork toys were released under the Scalex name. A complementary range was released under the name Startex.
My aunt worked at Millimodels at Mill Hill. Her name was Betty Guthrie, and she worked there, so she sort of said there's jobs going, so we went and got a job. I was 15 at the time. My sister Rachel, she worked there as well.
There was 2 long benches right down the middle of the factory, and, well, 3/4 of the way. Each side was where you would call assembly work, where you put bumpers on, everything like wheels, clicked wheels in, and the machine shop made a jig for all the little components, and you use this jig to put pieces on the cars.
The tasks I did was spraying the cars, which was just a metal frame of a car. I put it on a little jig, went out in the shed and sprayed it, had a mask on, sprayed it and then put it in a rack to dry, and then got the next one and sprayed it. And the paint was really it used to go everywhere, but I used to wear a mask, but every hour I had to stop and have a drink of milk. That was the health and safety bit, but that's all I wore was a mask and sprayed all these different cars,
I did do screening for a little while, but I wasn't very good at it because I was too impatient for the paint to dry. I put the bumpers on one car. I think one was an Aston Martin, and I think the other one was a Jag. So one had a strip along the side as well as the lights and bumper. Well, my friend used to sit next to me, and we used to race to see who could do the most in one day.
My auntie Bet, she used to get the sheet of metal and put it on a machine and then throw a handle, and it used to press out the car, and then she used to catch it and throw it back. One day she forgot to let go of the metal and she threw the handle, chopped the end of her finger off. The handle came round, hit her on the head, knocked her on the floor, and she was knocked out. The
foreman went up and saw to her and called for an ambulance, and then came down the factory and said, would anyone like to go up and use the press? We all said no, thank you.
I was aware that I was working for a family business, and I know Fred Francis was very highly respected. Everyone liked him,
Incentives were available in Havant for businesses relocating, and there was a large potential workforce in the rapidly expanding town. Key staff from Mill Hill joined Fred in Havant and were housed under a key worker scheme. Minimodels was the first building constructed on the New Lane industrial estate. Construction commenced in early 1954 and production started just a few months later.
I think I heard the reasons were because they were getting a bigger factory, and that it was going to be good because they were supplying houses for their key workers, which was a big thing in those days because there wasn't a lot of houses going up except in these new towns. I think Fred Francis brought my aunt down with him because she was a very good worker, and I think she was a good friend of his as well. They'd known each other for quite a long time. And as I say, she was one of the key workers for the company.
Having been inspired at the London Toy Fair in 1956, Fred constructed a prototype racing track system. The new toy, a 1:32 scale setup, was unveiled to acclaim at the Harrogate Toy Fair in January 1957. Fred combined the existing brand name of Scalex with electric, and so Scalextric was born.
I first joined Minimodels at the age of 16. I saw an advert in the paper and I wrote away and went for an interview and got the job. Well, the factory in New Lane was quite a big, to me, it was quite a big building. You came into the building and then you had to clock in. It was separated, where there was a body shop up the far end, and then all the rest of the factory was putting the models together and putting the rails in the track and making the armatures as well for the motors. I used to make the armatures, and it had a little counter on, and as soon as I did 30 rounds, I'd have to turn it over and then do another 30 rounds, turn it over, and then the final one, which was the third one. And then when that was completed, I used to take them off and put them in a bin. And Mr. Francis used to come round and just say to me, "How's it going?" Because it was just a new thing that he started. Fred Francis was quite an unassuming man. He just didn't seem like a boss at all, because he sort of mixed with everybody. Very polite, but he always had two other people with him, two other gentlemen with him, to just to show them what he was doing. The cars used to come down. I used to paint the helmets and the wheels. They'd go back on the line again, and then they'd be taken over to the other line to be tested on the track. When I had children of my own and any adverts used to come up, either in magazines or the television, I used to say that I used to work there, and I was quite proud to say that I actually helped to make these sets.
Recognising the need for vast investment, in November 1958, Fred sold Minimodels to Triang, the brand name of Lines Brothers Limited. In addition to having the capability to mass manufacture toys, Triang was an innovator in the use of plastic, having bought Rovex Plastics in 1951. The conversion of Fred's tin plate cars to plastic was the driving force behind the success of Scalextric, and ensured the brand became the icon it is today. In 1961, Minimodels moved from New Lane to a factory in Full Flood Road, Lee Park. The premises was one of the first two buildings on the new Dunsbury Way estate.
Mum was working at Minimodels, and wherever Mum worked, the children followed. So my elder sister was working there. Then Mum came out home one day and said, "Oh, I've got you a job at Minimodels. Leave your other job and go." So we went, and then my younger sister joined us as well. So there were 4 from the family at Minimodels, and it went on from there.
I joined Minimodels, I think, when I was around about 19. And Brian Parks, the engineer manager, interviewed me for assistant storekeeper. And I'd been a stockroom manager at Woolworths before. So he told me the wages, and I went to walk out. And I was just going to open the door of his office. He said, "Oh, you can work as much overtime as you like, Brian." "Oh, well," I said, "I'll come here then."
Well, I had been living in London, and for several reasons I decided to move back to Portsmouth and to live back at home with Mum and Dad. And I must have seen the opportunity to go and work at Minimodels. There must have been an advertisement in the paper or something. And so Minimodels it was. I went along and had a chat with Bill Langley, who was the chief designer, and he seemed to be quite happy with what I had to offer, with some experience in the motor industry as well as a background.
I saw an advert in the paper, and it was a 10-minute walk from my house, and I just thought that'd do me. So I applied for it and went to see the personnel manager. Literally in those days, it's what you did. You just knocked on the door. And I said, "Can I see the personnel manager?" Who I did, obviously, and he said, "Start next Monday. Thank you very much." And off you went.
Most of the young girls that worked there worked with their mothers. When you all went to work in the morning, everyone was going to the same place. They were all going to Minimodels. It was the main employer of the area.
Well, I mean, we used to start off 8 o'clock, and sometimes I might have been out on the raz with the boys, and got to go in at whatever time. So you wake up and you think, "Oh God, it's up past, what time is it? Up past 7. And you get out and you drag yourself out, chuck a bucket of water over you, put a shirt on, walk out of the house. And I knew it used to take me, I think it was 11 minutes. It was either 8 minutes or 11 minutes. But I know if I used to take a radio work sometimes, and if Tony Blackburn played MacArthur Park, 11 minutes to 8, I could get to work in time, because it was the start, and I was walking to work, and it was literally walk in the gate and plug in just as it finished.
When you used to go into the factory, you used to come past the mould shop first, and it just smelled terrible. I mean, I felt sorry for the girls that worked in there. But when you got past that, that's when you had all the lines where all the girls worked, and it was just, everybody just mucked in. It was good, just like a family unit.
None of the foremen were horrible. None of the management were horrible. They were all lovely. And that come down to the staff. We all worked very hard, but not because we was made to, but because we wanted to. We wanted it to be lovely and successful. And it was a lovely place to go to work.
The experimental department, as we were known, was very much a no-go area for other members of the factory. We were locked away, and in fact, I like to think we were locked in. Whilst we worked in a fairly free, creative environment, you might think that is unregulated. It wasn't unregulated at all, because we had to meet schedules of toy fairs and production schedules and so on and so forth.
I made all the Scalextric cars. I started them from scratch. I made everything, all the cars. I put the lights in, the seating and the little heads.
When I first went to work there, I was on the soldering the motors into the cars. I did that for about a year, I suppose, plus. And then from there, I went on to silkscreen printing, and that was printing the track on the lap counters. But when I did the silkscreen printing, with that, I was red hand, head to foot in a rash. And that was the polyurethane paint. You were given a pint of milk. That was it.
The first role was on the track line. So as the track passed down the line, the back of the rails had to be pressed over the rubber as it was initially, and later on the plastic. There were 2 lines, 2 track lines, and there must have been 16, 18, perhaps even 20 people on each track, and the 2 presses on each track, and then the packers at the end. So it was there was a lot of work turned out, in an individual day. So it was good.
The box sets used to come through a hole in the wall where the girls had made the boxes up, and then used to come in through a hole in the wall on a conveyor roller belt, and then you put 3 in a carton, and then you grab the box and put it through a stapling machine. And there was a pair of jaws on one side and a pair of jaws the other, which were movable. So the box went in, and then you clicked the foot, so it was air pressure, and it used to go click, click, click with these great big brass staples. Well, I was working extra fast one day. I don't know, perhaps he was one man short, and I went dink, 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 straight through my finger. Even to this day, look, still knackered.
One morning I come in, there's a note, stay behind Brian, see the works manager, so I went over to the works manager's office. In 3 weeks' time he said, you're going to be foreman of the press shop. I said, I don't want to be foreman of the press shop. He said, you have to. I said, I don't have to, I don't want to. So anyway, went on for a few weeks. Another note, stay behind, see the works manager. So he said, right Brian, you're going to take this foreman job. I said, well, I'm not. Right, he said, we're going to get rid of all the night shift. He said, I'm going to buy you a lovely new broom. He said, and you can sweep up all night. I said, or what? He said, be foreman of the press shop. I said, oh, all right, I'll be foreman of the press shop. I didn't really want to. There was
hundreds upon hundreds of cartons of 3 sets of Scalextrics in a carton. And we used to stack these boxes, 10 high, and just to go back forever. And so you're talking hundreds and hundreds of boxes. But when the foreman weren't looking, we used to just and then put them one away, and then build a wall up in front of this space. And eventually, the middle of these hundreds of cartons was empty. So, and we used to have we could walk across the top, take out the top box, and then go down the boxes which we made as steps, and into this area down below where we used to just sit and hide from the foreman, basically. He used to have a smoke and everything. You can imagine that these days, the smoke amongst all this cardboard.
The forklift, when we had the forklift, it was on charge in the press shop, where I was. And when I was on night shift, because it was there, I used to just unplug it, plug it in, take it anywhere I wanted, over the stores, down the stores, across the thing. And in the winter, I don't know how I never got killed, because I used to go out in all the snow and the ice, and I'd put my foot down as fast as I could and then press the brake, and I'd go spinning around and bang into a wall.
Miss Minimodels was a beauty competition. There was about 20, 30 girls entered it.
I think the first time I went in for it, I was 16. I'd only just not long joined. And it was an experience. I got through to the final 6, I think it was.
It was held actually in the canteen. And you had a surgical screen put across, so the girls were stood behind it. And they would file out one by one. Well, then it was mini dresses and scoop necks or up to the neck. But all in crimpling dresses, which was height of fashion then. And you just go through in front of the judges. They would ask you 3 or 4 questions. What you want to do, what do you do, what your hobbies are, and what your ambition was. Which the majority of us was to be happily married and have a family. And then the judges, which were the managers, they chose who was 1, 2, 3.
The year that I won was brilliant. And then it was Graham Lyons who said, come on, I'm going to dance with the winner. So we had a dance. And I was both shocked because from then on, I thought, oh, well, that's it. And then they said, no, you've now got to go to London.
In 1966, I won Miss Minimodels when I presented with a sash, which I can remember now was blue with silver writing on it. And from there, we were awarded a present. I think mine was a compact case. And we had photographs taken, which was brilliant. Then we went up to London a few weeks later for Miss Tryon.
My husband drove us up to Merton for the Miss Tryon final. And going up there, I was very, very nervous, but Mum had my dress done, and that was laid on the back seat. And I was a girl from Lee Park. It was something I'd never encountered before. And for people to actually come up and, sort of speak to you, you're stood there with your dress and your Miss Minimodels banner on, and they're coming up and saying to you, oh, what's it like, and you're thinking, well, I don't know these people, we come from a little community, and all of a sudden you're in London. I'd never been to London before. And it was a massive big hall, a big stage at the end with curtains, and we only had a canteen. So it was very scary, very scary. And when they said I'd won, I thought, God, this can't be real. The guy who presented me with my sash and a solid gold watch was a guy called Split Waterman, who was a motorcycle speedway world champion. So that was an honour. But of course, afterwards, not long afterwards, he was arrested for gold bullion smuggling. And I threw the watch away because I thought I would be getting in trouble because I'd accepted some gold off of him, not thinking Tryon had bought the watch, not Split Waterman.
In 1967, I won Miss Minimodels again. Good night. Girls were brilliant. Till later down the road, and then they sent me to Coventry because I'd won it again.
Miss Minimodels caused us a lot of people a lot of jealousy. She won it nearly every year and people got very jealous about it.
I was on the social club committee. I don't know how. I can't remember. But I went to them, I said, look, we want to start a football club, Minimodels Football Club. Can you let us have the money to buy the shorts? And they said, yeah, all right, then we will. Reg Barton was the works manager, and he was a lovely man, and he used to say to me, Brian, go in, clock in, Sunday morning for football. He said, we play football, go for a drink. He said, and then go and clock out. And I thought, well, that's, but I used to do it. And then in the evening, we started doing football training, 2 twice a week. And he'd say to me, Brian, go in, clock in, then clock out when you've finished on football training. So I've done it all the time. We played the Industrial Cup on Havant Park. And I'd already let Harry Barker get a bit involved in the football team because I was on night shift, it was quite difficult. And he said to me, Brian, he said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to drop you on Sunday. I said, what? Not dropping me, Harry. He said, well, I said, you're not, Harry. No, I said, I should just run all over the field. I said, and I should just disrupt it. I said, so you're not dropping me. So I played, and we won, didn't we? Won that little cup.
The year that I won Miss Minimodels and went up to do Miss Trying was the same year that the Minimodels football team got through to the final. So I went up on the Saturday night to the Miss Trying and was lucky enough to win it. Came back on the Sunday, because Miss Minimodels had to represent the factory at the football, and they won, so presented the trophy. So it was all that sort of thing.
The 1960s saw the Scalextric brand develop and grow, with new cars, track pieces and sets appearing to satisfy the ever-growing appetite of the young and adult racers too.
Very often the concept, the process of designing a car would start off in the most simple form as just we're going to produce a car that sells for this and reflects that type of car. But then there are also many technical challenges of what materials you use, how do you actually manufacture this particular piece. And so there was thermoplastic engineering, there was metal casting engineering, there was electrical engineering, all sorts of different technologies, all of which had to dovetail together to produce the cars that we know and love today. To access the original information about the cars, to measure them, to photograph them, and to just generally get the feeling for what the cars were like, we used to go along to the Goodwood racetrack with our cameras and our measuring tapes and all the rest of it. And so we would come away from there with a whole stack of material from which we then would sit around and say, well, how can we make that in model form? How can we simplify that? Some of the things that we had to reproduce in model form, we didn't even know what they were, but it was obviously a very large feature of the car, so we would include that and try and make it as similar in appearance as we could. I suppose the biggest job that I did whilst I was there was to oversee the design and launch of the Super 124 series, which were the larger scale models. It was very important that we were the first company to launch those cars, that they decided to ship myself and one other designer off to an isolated flat above Woolworths in Havant, and we worked down there on our own for about 6 months to get this whole new technology sorted out and into production. We had a lot of emotional support, you might say, from the sales staff at Woolworths, the girls, who had their storeroom just up above our flat, so there was a lot of traffic past our front door. But we got on with the job, and sure enough, when it was launched, nobody else had any answer to it. Bill and I used to go to the Nuremberg International Toy Fair at the beginning of the year, and of course taking the 1/24th scale over and launching it on an unsuspecting trade world was very exciting, and it made quite a lot of news coverage over there. Scalextric had by then grown into quite a serious slot car racing system. The introduction of the 24th scale series was an admirable aspiration to have, but it probably exceeded the expectations of the market itself, and I think it still remains a great piece of equipment, but it didn't have the sales appeal of the simpler, smaller cars.
A number of contributing factors led to the closure of the factory in Havant in 1970, leading to the eventual collapse of Lines Brothers Limited.
There used to be pilfering going on in the factory, and then of course a lot of it did happen on night shift. And they obviously used to get it out through the back way and down by the stream. And I think they put it under the wire because there was no way would it have gone over the top. And they used to retrieve it later that night.
I can remember that there was something going around that you know, quite a few of them were stealing. So somebody must have, one of the staff or one of the girls must have gone to security and said, look, there's 5, and we didn't know at the time there was 5 of them, but 5 of them got caught in their car. So it was only people that had a car could really steal, wasn't it? And these 5 people stole, and they got caught, and they got instant dismissal, which was only right, wasn't it?
I know 1 or 2 boys used to shove cars down their socks. But you had to be so careful because they could just pick you out at the gate. And if someone was a whistleblower, they could go to the gate beforehand and say, Harry Smith, jeans, red shirt, he's coming out, he got stuff down his socks. Straight away, I think they took you to court, they just sacked you, bang, out the door, and that was it. But I remember there was, I won't mention no names, but she used to work on the track where the track was made in the plastic sections, and then the steel rails were hammered in, turned over, and then bent over, and that was your track. She brought home, she got these track pieces, and she brought them home, and she said, "Here, son," she said, "I brought you home some track for your Scalextrics." And he said, "Well, this ain't no good." She said, "Why ain't it?" And he said, "There's no steel track in it. It's just plastic. You can't pick up no juice or run any cars on it." She thought she was doing him a favour.
Well, about a year before the factory closed, I happened to be walking back to the press shop, and Brian Parks, the one who'd employed me, and he came up to me and said, "Brian, the factory's going to close in about a year's time." He said, "So look for another job." And I was quite shocked. It was quite a shock, wasn't it? When you think back, you had a foreman for every line. You didn't need all that. You had about 14 or 15 foremen. No wonder the place couldn't pay for itself. You only probably wanted 1 girl looking after 3 or 4 of them lines. Only a couple of girls, that's all you needed, but that's foreman of every line. They used to stand around talking with their hands in their pockets all day. Never had nothing to do.
The memory I have of the factory closing was Mum coming home and saying to us, "We're losing our jobs." Most of the factory had been made redundant just by being talked to. Everyone was collected round by the big injection moulding machines, and the managing director came down and said, "The factory's closing, collect your pay from the office." And there were about a dozen people kept for repairs, that sort of thing. And Mum was one of them. And she stayed right until the day they closed the door. So she was there for about another year, I would say. But it just wasn't the same. The Lee Park was never the same. It lost its zing.
A lot of people there were young people just paying mortgages, rent and everything. Oh, how are we going to make ends meet now, you know? This is our bread and butter, and how are we going to manage and everything? And people went out the gate crying, and it was absolutely terrible.
And when I left out, I looked back at the factory and I thought, and I cried all the way home.
Nearly everybody from Lee Park worked at Minimodels. Lee Park was dead then; it went dead.
I suppose I have to keep in mind that at the time, we were just doing a job that we loved to do. We didn't know that it would go on for another 50 years as a global product. But it's certainly very nice to think that it did, and it's nice to think that we were somehow or other responsible for that success.
It was an end of an era, and we were the last ones that made it over here, really.
Everything you do in your life feeds towards what you become later in life. And Minimodels was a big part of our life because it was such a big community where everybody knew everybody. Oh yeah, I was always proud of working at Minimodels.
No, Minimodels is a beautiful, never met any place like that ever again. It was a beautiful place, beautiful place.
To have Minimodels in Lee Park was one of the greatest things we ever had in Lee Park.
It was a major employer for many years, and it was certainly part of the expanding fabric of this area. And the fact that we can now look back on it in a more permanent way, I think is absolutely splendid.